Welcome to the New Birth Fitness Podcast. My name is Shiloh Bryant, and this is my wife,
Danny.
So, here we're all about empowering moms to transform lives and change the world. As you can see, we're in a different location than we were the last few times on the podcast, but I think it's actually fitting. It's a little bit more of a special, intimate episode for us. On top of that, this is actually where we recorded our very first YouTube channel video. So I think it's kind of a full circle moment to kind of look back and then go from there into the future. The last episode, was me reflecting back on the different guests we had on, just the overall experience of the podcast so far, and kind of even heading into the future. What is your thoughts currently based on what's happened so far on the podcast? Any guests, anything that just comes to mind?
Well, I think it was a good glimpse of, some people that we have definitely impacted. With Nathan and his episode, I was just shocked at how much he was able to give the people, his inside thoughts, what you wouldn't imagine that a kid would think, and how his words could really help, even an adult, a mom. So I was really shocked, with his podcast. And then everybody else, like how comfortable they felt sharing and how easy it was for us to just have a conversation and make them feel comfortable. So in a way, I was happy to see, the results of those first episodes. And I think that there's so many areas where we can give value when it comes to even what we're going to be talking about today, which is relationships. A lot of people, they tend to see, the perfect relationship. And they're like, wow, and I love that we can be an inspiration to many people, but also there's certain things that they don't get to see.
Yeah.
And I think that it's important for people to hear that side as well, so that they can use the tools and things that we've gone through to help them.
Yep, because this is our, on September the 8th was our first anniversary. And it didn't feel like it was just anniversary one. It felt like we have been together for a long time because of all the different experiences we went through together. So we had a nice trip this weekend. The weekend before that, we went to Busch Gardens. We went to Williamsburg, Virginia. And the historic environment and 5-course meal for the first time ever in a French restaurant. So it was a lot of different experiences. And then this past weekend, we got to cut off cake that we was like, how's this going to turn out? If some people freeze their wedding cake and you put it in the freezer and you're like, how is this actually going to be when you take it out? And it was amazing.
Yeah, I didn't know that was an actual tradition for a lot of people. But I remember, for our wedding, your mom was like, definitely keep the top because it's a special moment, 1 year later to just look back. And somebody decided we were going to keep it another year.
We don't know how it's going to work out.
We're
going to cut this piece right here, and then we're going to freeze that. Hey, worst case scenario, it doesn't work out, and then we eat something else instead.
Right.
I was kind of joking. I was like, see, in our 10th year anniversary, we're going to have a little crumb that's frozen. and have a little take.
That's taking it too far.
All right, my bad. Speaking on that, so we've had a lot of amazing moments. We've done a lot of traveling with ourselves, the boys. We had a lot of family interaction, a lot of other people that we never got to meet before, different experiences. What's your feelings when you just kind of reflect back on the year, the good and the bad? Let's talk about some of those things. Because I love what you mentioned, that sometimes people only see one side of it, and then they get this representation that this is the only way, and now they're comparing themselves to the perfect image of people. I think it's important, just like you mentioned, to have both sides of the spectrum.
Right. So I think to start, any relationship that you're trying to build, it's going to take effort, but especially marriage, people... when they jump into it, what tends to happen is when people are so in love, they feel like they're going to keep that same feeling all throughout, especially, that first year. But, just being very candid, I feel like this year was actually not rough in a bad way, but rough in areas that it took a lot of growth. It took a lot of, having to learn how to communicate with each other, having to learn that we come from different backgrounds. So there's certain things that I'm going to believe in a certain way, and there's other things that you're going to have a strong opinion, and you're not going to change your opinion. So there's so many things that through, just our own experience, mentors, people like, your mom, which we plan on having her on a podcast. But she's about to have 32 years in of marriage.
Yeah.
So, and my
And your
parents,
parents, yeah.
they have 25 years. So you're getting advice and you're getting mentored by people that have the experience, that have the knowledge, that have been through those things. And if you choose not to listen and say, hey, everything's just perfect all the time, you're already setting yourself up for failure, because you're like, as soon as it starts to feel uncomfortable, as soon as it starts to feel a little hard, you're like, oh, I'm not going to be able to, do this. I can't take that.
And
So,
we're adding even extra factors on top of that, like we're blending family, right? So, you had two boys already who are now my boys as well, but they come from having things done a certain way, and now we're all merging together. So even that transition of going from them not knowing me to spending more time around each other to living together, the transition for them as well as you, just having to be with a person like me,
yeah, and I mean, even touching on that. So, what does it mean, a person like you? A person like you, is somebody that I think, many people may know just the outside version, of you wanting to help and give back, and, how driven you are and the things that you're doing. But what they don't get to see is all the work and, basically the mindset that's behind that. And I remember coming into the relationship with the boys, I knew from the beginning that it would be a place where they would be challenged. So there were many things that, as a mom, you want to protect your children and make them feel safe and make them feel good. But they didn't have the full picture of, what a man should look like. They had a picture, obviously their dad was in their life and he was around and all this stuff, but there were certain things that I was more dominant on teaching them, when I didn't realize that maybe I should take a step back and allow, a man to be the one to teach them certain things, like keeping your word, being consistent, not letting up on those things that, make a mom feel uncomfortable.
Yeah, because it's easy for a mom to go into strictly protection mode, and what's protecting now is actually hurting later.
Right.
Because these are things that, especially for boys, once these things are ingrained, they don't just randomly change later unless some drastic thing happens. And they're still going to have a lot of things that where, in a way, a mom can make their boys into somebody else that is not even attractive to other women.
Right.
Those same things that you want them to do here in front of you while they're younger, you wouldn't even like that man.
Yeah.
So it is important to be aware of that and not just think in the moment and where they're going to be later. So yeah, I mean, that's always going to be a transition when you're like, these are, in the beginning, like, these are my kids. They came out of me. And now you have to figure out how to deal with, there's another person in your life now, and it's not his blood kids.
Right.
But still, at the end of the day, what he's saying is what he's saying bad. Is he actually trying
And
to,
I feel like a very important piece, in any relationship, in any marriage, it doesn't matter if, they're your blood kids, if you're blending families together. Children definitely need to see, that the relationship is stable.
Yeah.
That, there's not arguments that are going on in front of them. And in a way, I would want to say something right now, but I can't say something in front of the kids because I'm not gonna take that authority from you, and you're not gonna take it from me. So there were a lot of things where it was like, okay, maybe in this second we don't agree, but
you got to pull to the side and talk about that later.
Exactly.
You always have to be united in front of your kids. It's not to say, oh, they shouldn't know that there's conflict at different times. Yes, but there's still a way to do that without it causing kids more pain.
Or, the way that you do it is in a respectful manner. If you don't agree or something, it's like your kids almost learn the cues of what it means when, there's a disagreement, but they don't see the disrespect, which is very important.
Because when they see that, they can use that again, like they'll play one parent against another parent. And I've seen that happen to so many families to where that creates a division in the house because it started from the parents not having a united front.
Yeah, and I feel like a very controversial point is, you know, especially for the dynamic that I have coming in with kids,
Yep.
is, you know, where do the kids sit? You know, are they more important than your spouse? You know, are they equally as important? You know, or is it something where it's like we come to a common decision that it's just a free for all? And I feel like that was one of the things that we discussed, you know, even before we decided to get married, was, you know, let's say that there was something that came up and it was, you know, either the kids or me. And I remember telling you, you know, if I'm going into a relationship and marriage is my ultimate goal, then I have to understand that, you know, my marriage goes first. And that's something that, you know, a lot of people struggle with because you might say it and it's actually, you know, the way that you should live, but it's harder said than done
But
because
easier said than done.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's easier said than done, you know, and I remember just being called back to my words and saying, "Do you remember what you said? Because this was part of your, you know, non-negotiables." And I feel like that was a very important, you know, boundary and a very important foundation, you know, to build off of our relationship, because it's very easy to let, you know, how your kids feel or maybe certain decisions that you would have taken that are impactful for your family, but you don't take them because you're thinking about your kids.
Yeah,
When in the long run, everything that you're doing is really to set the foundation for them.
Yeah, and that was a very big deal for me because I mean, I told you earlier on, you always knew that, like for me, I always said that if I was, the chance of me being with a woman that had kids already was very, very low. I've always said that it would take a very, very special woman for me to even consider that being a possibility, right? So, and I was like, and if that's considered to be a possibility, it has to be that those kids, I have to be like, these are my kids. I should be able to have just as much discipline control and say with them as you do.
Yep.
Because if that's not the case,
Well, and with that being said, you know, a lot of women, and you know, this is speaking to the women that, you know, have kids and they're coming into a relationship. We want that other person to treat them like their kids.
Yep.
But when it comes to, you know, are you able to discipline them?
Yep.
Are you able to guide them? Are
Yep.
you able to help them? You know, we want the other part, but maybe we don't
There
want
you
this
go.
part.
And really, that's the
So
most important part that shapes them for later. You want, you know, for it to be, hey, give them the good stuff, make them happy, make them this, make them that. But especially for boys, but even women, even showing a lady how she should, you know, hold herself, how she should carry herself, how she should be around other, like all those things are important. It's not just gifts, good times, activities, because those are the things that they're with them in the moment, but a lot of that stuff they forget about.
Yeah.
But what they stick to is the principles and the guidance and things that now later on carry on them for the rest of their life.
So, I mean, I would say that that is something that is very particular to our relationship, and it's an extra, it's an extra hurdle because you know, getting to know each other, you getting to know the kids, you know, us setting up the dynamic, you know, in our household, and you know, them feeling comfortable with you, were all things that we had to figure out in the first year, you know, and we keep saying to ourselves like we couldn't be more blessed with how everything has turned out, you know,
100%.
how, you know, we have been able to merge our families, but it definitely wasn't always, you know, the easiest
No.
of times.
I definitely think the way we went about it and having God on our side, He definitely made it as smooth as it could be. When it comes to like, this could have been a night and day different situation. There's some people that go to blend families and then either the guy hates the kids or the kids absolutely hate the guy, you know, and now the dynamic is
Or the
rocky.
family, or the
Yeah,
family
that's a
doesn't like
big
the other
part.
person.
Yeah, they
So,
come
you
in, the
know,
kids feel like I don't even feel like I belong because the grandparents on one side don't like, because we're also blending different races too. But on both sides, it's been very welcoming. People like, wow, we can see why you're together. It's been a very welcoming environment.
Yeah, and even if that weren't the case, because I know
Yes.
that for a lot of relationships, that's not the case.
Yep.
You have family that they're giving you a little bit more resistance, or your kids, but at the end of the day, you have to realize, where's your commitment,
No.
and you have to set boundaries with those people. So I remember asking you, when we weren't really sure, how we were moving, like, what if your family didn't like me, or what if, my family didn't like you or whatever.
Yep.
Then I remember, having those conversations and being like, obviously you're not going to get rid of your family, but you have to set those boundaries and say, okay, well, if you don't like my partner,
Yep.
then you're just going to see a lot less
Yes.
of me,
So
because
yeah.
my dedication is to that person, especially if you're marrying that person.
Yeah, I'm always gonna
So,
take so that's basically kind of my response to it. But I'm always gonna take my family's opinion into context, because I know they normally give sound advice. But at the same time, they know how I am. So when I make a decision, that's what I'm gonna go with. But I like to still hear their insight. They have so much time and experience. But at the end of the day, if they were like, we don't think this person is good for you at all. And for me, I'm looking at her and like, this is who I want. This is who I want to be with, and everything that comes with, then that's what I'm going to go with. So at that point, now it's up to me to hold the boundary with my family to say, hey, this is the person I'm choosing. So now, you have to respect her just like I respect her. And if it came to, and that's not my family, but if I was in a situation where my family was like, no, absolutely not, we don't agree with this, then to me, I got to create distance. I still love my family. I love her, but I got to create more distance because I can't let that ruin my life. And in some cases, it's what's meant to be in that case. Where it's not you're choosing your significant other over your family or vice versa. It's more like, hey, I got to live my life. You lived your life. So now I got to make my decision, my choices for myself.
yeah, and
So even
some
if it went wrong, you still made a decision, right? Let me live with it just like you got to live with
yeah, and
yours.
some people have more of an uphill battle, to get to that point where their family,
Yep.
accepts, or even the kids, accept. But like I said, we have been very blessed,
Yep.
in our journey, when it comes to that.
What would you say has been the most difficult thing for you over the last year?
Okay. So, I definitely come from a background where I'm very used to being independent. Very independent, very, capable of making my own
Yep.
decisions. I actually rather it be that way. But coming into a relationship where, even from the beginning, I felt safe, for you to help me make decisions. I looked out and kind of like I ran with everything that you were telling me. And I kind of looked at you like a mentor because basically in a relationship, if you can't trust your man to lead you, if you can't trust them to make decisions, then there's an instability that's created that many women they feel like they want to have that position, but really when you're in it, you get tired of it. And I came from the background of being the woman that made a lot of the decisions, being the person that maybe I never knew that I needed or that I wanted to have somebody that was strong-willed, that made decisions. But when I got into the relationship, things that were very attractive to me in the beginning, they started turning into like, okay, this is reality. Like this is something that I said I wanted. And it was a lot of, internal conflict to get to the position of saying, you know, this is challenging me because it's going against, the feeling that I had control in many areas, the feeling or the the fake feeling of, feeling like I can do this on my own, or and there's nothing wrong with, being independent, because I remember one of the things that I told you, coming into the relationship was I like to feel useful. I like to feel like I'm doing my part. So I never want to get, that opportunity taken where, I can work for my own, I can do things, I can have my own But now it's like a joint effort. Like, how do we bring it together? How do we, even, starting this podcast, everything that you're doing had to be, me getting to the realization of we're not against each other. And this is not competition. It's more like, what are the things that are your strong points and what are the things that are my strong points, and how do we bring them together? Because sometimes when you're a person that's very ambitious, or when you're a person that you see everything like, how can I get better? I could look at your strong points and say, I have to be just like him. I have to, live up to that expectation. I have to, do things on his level. And I remember at first, that was exactly how I felt. It was very, overwhelming, because it's like, there's no way that I can let him be better. And it was, just speaking from a very, honest and candid place, it was very frustrating for me, because I wasn't used to that. I was actually used to the opposite. I was used to, being the smarter one, being the brighter one, being the one that, made the decisions, and I felt good about that. So having to let go of some of that control. I know that now more and more you hear about relationships, and how difficult and how challenging they can be, because I honestly feel like when you find a person that you're meant to be with, it's not always going to be easy. That person is definitely going to challenge you in ways that it's either you grow and you allow your relationship to get to the next level, or you stay stuck in it. And I feel like a lot of it, a lot of the rough patches, in this first year, was coming to the realization that either I learn from this and we get better, or I get stuck in this feeling, and now it's that sucky feeling, over and over.
I think one of the biggest things that cause relationships so many issues is not accepting. Like, this is how this person is. This is how the other person is. Now, where can we meet in the middle? But there are certain things that's just how this person is. So not accepting that you're going to grow because of the difference in personalities in certain areas. Different people have different skills. So if you don't accept, like, let's say, this is what you liked in the beginning, and now you're in the situation and now you don't like it, but you knew this is how it was in the beginning, so that's not going to randomly change.
Right. I mean, I feel like for women, a lot of women, they have, the expectation that they're going to come into a relationship and that they're going to be able to change that man.
Yep.
They're going to be able to change his habits. If he was very driven, then he's just going to put that down for me.
There you go.
Or if he was a certain way, he's not going to do that because now we're married.
Yep. And then men think the exact opposite. And it's like, this is the woman I chose. This is the woman I love. And men are expecting that woman to stay the same. But there's no way for her to stay the same with childbirth, different emotions going on, hormones. There's no way through the different years she's going to stay the same. So it's really like both sides being adaptable and accepting the parts of people, of your partner, that's like, this is how I am, but also saying, not being so firm on this is how I am when it's something that sabotages your relationship and where you're heading. Some parts and pieces of us, we got to let go because they do not help. They hurt everybody around us. So we got to say, as much as this is who I used to be, I can't be that person anymore.
I think that that's a very big challenge that, relationships go through when they find somebody that, is really meant to make them better.
And I think on that note, just to kind of my perspective, like yours being, these are the things I admired in the beginning, but they were hard when I got into it. Mine was also like, this is how I am. When I want something, I push for it full steam ahead, almost tunnel vision. But it's like, okay, now how I can't really do that with a family completely. Like, there's other factors I now got to take into account versus like, I'm just going on this. So even trying, so in the beginning, I had a hard time trying to balance how much work do I put into this over here in the passion and how much work do I put into the family. But then I started realizing, one of my mentors said that balance, when you're going forward on things, balance is not, It's one of those things we get taught that you got to balance everything, but it literally will sabotage everything too. Because while I'm trying to balance, and now if she starts seeing that I'm living below who I really am, she'll actually start to form resentment for me. So actually, the best service I can do to her is by pushing forward on the things I'm passionate about. Of course, still keeping her in mind, but not trying to do this. It's better for me to be who I am and then take her into consideration than to try to fight against who I am. She's not getting the best version of me. And the other people that we're supposed to be helping and changing lives up, they don't even get the best version.
Correct.
So that was a big thing for me is how much time do you put into this? How much time do you put in this? And it's like, it's all the same goal. The reason I'm doing it is for my family. That's why I'm doing it. So that's where the acceptance comes in. On the woman side of things, it's hard, but it's like if your guy is doing things technically to push forward for a better life for you all, even when it's thinking, hey, he's not spending enough time, or hey, I wish he would do this that way. Sometimes you gotta bend in certain areas and say, if all these things over here are right, but these few things over here, sometimes you gotta let things slide.
Yeah, I mean, and I feel like it's definitely coming from, as men and as women, we have different needs.
Yep.
We have a different role and a different purpose that we serve. So it's understanding that those roles are a little different, but at the same time, I feel like one of the things that I definitely learned was, don't get in the way of that man's vision and his purpose, because that's ultimately where you want to be.
Yep.
And it was a little difficult for me because, coming from a place where everybody teaches you, you just have to balance things out, or how things should be, and they don't speak to you, about those roles. You just grow up watching maybe your dad is doing something, your mom is doing something else, but specifically you don't know what works for you. So I feel like one of the things is, you wouldn't like if your man or if your husband wasn't pursuing anything. So, give that space.
I mean, because overall, if a woman is able to stop a man from pushing forward on what he's doing, you want to see an empty man is one that has no purpose, one that has any idea what direction he's going. You will see an empty shell of a man, and that's going to be a man that you hate. And on the same token, from a man's, if you allow your woman or significant other to strip you away from your passion, that's not you being a man either. They don't respect that at all. Sometimes women can say, if a woman feels like she can maneuver things too much, she actually loses respect for you. That's just how it works. They want to know.
I mean, not initially. You feel like you're getting your way, and you feel like,
Exactly.
oh, he's doing everything that I want.
In the short term.
In the short term, but in the long term, you're like, wait, or if something goes wrong, it's like, why did you allow that? It's easier for us to say, hey, we're gonna shift that blame a little bit because you should have known better. So I feel like even with that is like, as women, allowing space for that. But also, if you really want to be a contributing factor to, that success and that purpose that your man has, it's like finding ways to become the inspiration for that person.
There you go.
Whether it's, support, whether it's, they know that you're sacrificing, for the overall, end result.
Either you're supporting by just, hey, I'm there, I'm motivating, hey, even times are hard, I'm here with you emotionally, because a lot of times guys don't really get to share their emotion. So now that's our safe space. Our woman is our safe space. So either on that side, and also if you're going to include yourself in the vision, because what happens is if you're so envious of the vision and where it's going, you start pulling yourself away from it, which causes more resentment. And now what started as this was just a business or just that, now it actually impacts the relationship, which also impacts your kids. So finding inclusion and support, even in the times it feels like you want to do the opposite, is the best thing for you.
And if you find yourself in a point of, resistance, really asking yourself why. Why am I having this resistance? What what is the internal deeper things that are going on? What makes me feel, if it's you're feeling left out or you're feeling, hurt. Those are some of the things that I had to figure out, for myself. Like, why am I experiencing these things? And
That's literally the most important part that a lot of people miss is asking themselves questions. A lot of the time, people are waiting to get answers on things that literally you could have just asked yourself the question. But it's really easy to get lazy with your thinking. Where, hey, this thing happened, I'm upset about it, I don't like it, and you're just reacting. So as soon as things happen, you're just reacting. You're not thinking, you're just reacting to things. What if you take them, as soon as you're triggered, wait, why did I get triggered there? If every single time you feel a certain way, why is that emotion so strong? Maybe it was something in your past where, hey, this person did this to you, or previous relationship, or your dad, or your mom, and you're carrying this little girl into your adult life, and now you're really still that little girl.
yeah, I'm actually reading this book that's called Lazy Love by Pastor Keon,
Yeah.
and it speaks on so many things because you can allow yourself to get stuck in this lazy love because you're like, hey, this is just how I am. You're gonna have to deal with it. You're gonna have this is who I am. But like you said, don't get stuck in this is who I am. Try to figure out, you know, what are my best chances of learning how to communicate?
Yeah.
Why is it that I'm being triggered? All these different things. And I feel like that book is a great way, to start if you don't know, necessarily what are your attachment styles?
Yeah.
What is the best way that you can communicate with somebody?
Look, honestly, we live in an age where the excuse of I've never got shown this or I don't know how is just an excuse. Because there's so many resources out there if you choose to do it. Whether that's books, whether that's YouTube, whether that's podcasts. If you want to answer and you want to get to a place to where you're better, it's out there. It's not like back in the day where you got your circle of people, you don't really travel nowhere, you don't really see anybody online. It's like, now that's a tougher situation. Who do I go to? Where do I get what book?
I
What
mean, and there's
you
so
know?
many tools, there's even people that, are very religious. And honestly, if you look at the Bible, it gives you a blueprint of
Yep.
how you should live, your marriage, how you should treat other people, what love really is, And there's so many things that, if we put it into context in our life, then we could apply those same things and it could help not only our relationship, but the relationship that our kids get exposed to, and now the relationship that they get to have, growing up.
And you guys, that's why we're doing this. Like, this isn't just about us, it's about you guys having transformation for you and your families. So even us sharing this certain things that people have never heard from us at all, and we're sharing it because we know there's a lot of other people that go through the same things,
Right.
and in some cases much worse.
Yep.
Right? So it's not about a comparison, it's about what do you have and what are you willing to do to make what you have the best version of what it can be.
Yep. And I feel like, one more thing that I will speak on is when you are, a person that is coming from a previous relationship, that is something that, you can't allow your past hurts, your past traumas, your past experiences, the things that you lived in the past come into your present relationship, your present life, because you have to be able to differentiate that this is not that person, or I may not be the same person that I was when I was in that relationship.
No.
I feel like, that is something that is a lot more difficult than what people speak about,
Nope.
because it's a challenge, when you're coming into a relationship where necessarily there's still things that you need to heal from. You can't just say, oh, well, this person, they're just taking it on and it's up to them, to heal it. There's so many things that you have to do the work. You have to do the internal work, and you have to be able to separate and not get stuck in the past.
Yeah, because there's a huge difference between who you had to become to protect yourself in a situation or to survive in a situation versus who you have to become to be in a situation where you can flourish, where you can actually push forward into the future to actually have the things that you actually want in life.
Yep, and there's a happy, there's a happy medium between, this person accepting that you're a person that comes with, baggage, experiences, but then also you have to be the one that says, I have to do the work. This person cannot do it for me. If there's something in your life that you feel like mentally or emotionally, spiritually is holding you back, or it's an area that you need to grow in, personally, you have to find things that help you with that.
Yeah, because your partner can support you, but they can't do it all. So if anything, look at it as assistance. But at the end of the day, you can't control anybody else. The only person you can control is you. And if you can barely control you, how you gonna control anybody else? You're in your own body. You have your own mind. So if you can't control one person, how you gonna control your partner?
And that's a very important thing, when it comes to, the dynamic between a man and a woman. Men are typically more rational thinkers. It doesn't make sense sometimes when we're going through all of these emotions. And it could be like a roller coaster. We have, different cycles that we go through and hormones. And some of us have, different conditions that heighten those, or, it just makes it more difficult, even mentally, to cope with some things.
I think that's also why this is so amazing for us both doing this together, because a lot of time women don't really get the genuine perspective of a man. It's easy for women to get the perspective of a man who's after them and wants them, or they get the perspective of the man who just tells sugarcoating everything to try to tell them what they want to hear, and then they get the version of man that they get to hear from their girlfriends and, hey, this man did this to me, this man did this. So a lot of skewed points of view versus a person coming from the place of actually want to see you flourish in life and get better. I have no ties in you as a woman. It's just your transformation. So I think it's a good dynamic because now once you have the information on how a guy really looks at things, how he really sees things, now you can move according to this versus all the things that kind of got a little twisted and turned, and now you're reacting based on that. That's two different experiences.
Yep.
One of the biggest things I see, and you hear it all the time, people saying communication, communication, communication. And everybody knows communication is one of the things that breaks up relationships, can hold a relationship together. And they're saying it, but what are you doing to actually work on your communication with your partner? And I think a big part of it really is one side is coming from, I want to be right. And the other side is coming from, I want to be right. And both sides are fighting to be right. And now because you're both fighting to be right, now you're both wrong because now you don't have a relationship anymore. That's basically what ends up happening.
Yeah.
So instead of coming to a place, I'm trying to have this conversation to win or to be right, actually trying to understand where the person is coming from. Get to a place of why are they responding in the way they are? And not just you assuming why, asking them. You ask them, let them actually have their piece, say what they have to say. Don't be interrupting the whole time, because if you're interrupting, you don't really get to hear their true thoughts and feelings on it. And also it makes it harder for them to want to share the next time as well, when there's a backlog of 10 years, 15 years, 20 years of every single time these situations come up. It never goes well.
And I feel like one of those things that it may be difficult, on both sides, but when you're saying like, are you actually listening to the person? You may have your woman come to you and she's saying all these things, right? And then eventually they're like, I don't even want to say anything because, it always turns into an argument or a disagreement, So I feel like it's that doing the work beforehand so that it doesn't get to the point where your partner is not really telling you anything. They're not communicating anything because they're afraid and scared of the backlash that it could have.
And if you are in that situation, it's not to say that it's impossible to reverse, but it takes a lot of work because it is a uphill battle to go from this has been happening for a long time and now I'm trying to get to a place of having better communication. So it's not a reason to give up, but know that for the other person to change, a lot of the time it starts with you. Not even a lot of time, every single time it starts with you first. If you show up differently than you've been showing up the whole time, you'll notice that they have no choice but to change in some kind of way. In some cases, that means it starts change. And honestly, the way I personally view it is, change whether that means you're still in a relationship with a person or if the relationship is over. In both ways, it worked out exactly how it's supposed to. In both ways, it's still good because, look, if you're in a relationship with somebody that it's a dead end, it's not really going anywhere, that could be doing you both a favor. If the split did happen, now you both get to move on in your purpose in a different kind of way. Or now instead of, because you had the uncomfortable conversation now, maybe you have that volatility for a year. Maybe I have that volatility for 2 years, but you're now working towards, wait, year 3 looks a little bit better because you're having the volatility now in the short term. I feel like so many people want to do the things that feel really great now and hoping for the really good things later. But if you don't do the difficult stuff now, the great later doesn't even come.
Yeah. Yeah, and I feel like it's definitely important when you see that your partner is making certain changes to commend them for that.
Yes.
You know, so I feel like even in this first year we had many instances where I was like, wow, like he really did better on that. Or you would tell me like, hey, you know, I appreciate that you were able to, you know, move past what you would typically do. And we're in this point right now. And it's not going to be perfect, you know, the first time or the second time. You know, it may take multiple times of you, you know, pushing through that uncomfortable situation where you're like, I know I can. I know I can do this.
Yeah,
It's just gonna take a little bit.
don't expect night and day change right away. Be okay with if somebody's been doing the same habits and thinking the same way for the last 20 years and now you finally met them. There's no way it's just gonna automatically reverse. So be patient. If it's something that you feel like is worth fighting for, fight for it so that you can get what you want. And then at the end of the day, at the end of it, I mean, really, I am very thankful for this last year of us being married. Like, it's just shown me even more of why we're meant to be together. Like I said to God earlier on, because for me, I'm a very logical thinking person. You know that. So when making a decision like, hey, I'm taking on a whole family already before any additions, right? So for me, I asked God, I was like, show me if this is the direction I should go. And I said, God, give me a sign. And when I asked God for this sign, he dumped a boatload of signs on my face. And honestly, for me, it felt like if I would have did the opposite after asking for a sign, that would be like me spitting in God's face. And I wasn't about to do that. So here we are a year later, well, actually a little bit more than a year later. And I'm thankful and blessed to have you in my life. You know, so it's only beginning, so much more on the way as usual for you, for us, for y'all. But we wanted to be vulnerable with you guys and kind of share a little bit of this, a little bit of our experience.
Yeah, and allow you guys to be on the ride with us. You know, I know that we're going to have many exciting things that you guys are going to be able to, you know, live through, you know, our experience and us allowing, you know, for these moments to continue to happen so that we can have growth all around.
Yeah, this is family. This is togetherness. You're not in this battle alone. Like, this isn't just fitness. Everything ties into your mindset, your emotion, like it's all the full package. So we're going to work on all of this together, but you can't just do it alone. It takes a team effort. All right. So on that note, this is podcast
Number 6.
and many more to come. Thank you guys for being here. See you.